Well, hello again, and welcome to another episode of Wrestling Beyond the Pulpit with the Good News Gang. I am joined today by Pastor Jackie Ranieri from Clare UMC and Pastor Curtis Clark from Marysville UMC. And of course, I am your host, Pastor Matt West from Marble Memorial UMC in Milan. And we are back once again to wrestle with another topic, and we are missing Pastor Kim and Pastor Matt this week. Hopefully they'll be able to join us next time. But nonetheless, we're going to claim the three best this week.
That's right.
Since we're the ones that showed up. Just kidding. We still love Pastor Kim and Pastor Matt. No, just it's all in good jest.
There you go.
And I think maybe just as a disclaimer for the folks who are watching, I think our intention every week is for all five of us to always be here. Mm-hmm. Sometimes in the life of pastoral ministry, emergencies happen, things come up, and things need to get take precedent over. Not that this isn't important, it is, but we have to honor, crises and emergencies and sometimes family needs as well. So.
Yeah, they're not just blowing us off.
Exactly. So
they didn't get a better offer, you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Dagnabbit.
Free donuts and coffee somewhere else. Nope.
Ooh, I'm there.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, anytime you got coffee and donuts. I mean, granted, I'd only eat the donuts, but hey. I can't get into that coffee. Yeah.
Coffee.
Yuck. Gross. Well, anyhow, we've come and decided to wrestle with the topic, being that the season of Thanksgiving is upon us. Some may see this episode before the holiday, and some may not see it until after. But either way, we're gonna spend a little time with these questions from pub theology again. And so our icebreaker this week is: what is your favorite part of the Thanksgiving meal, and what do you save on the plate for last?
Stuffing.
You say stuffing?
Stuffing and cranberries. I save those for last because I just love them so much. That's like my all-time favorite.
I'd say probably for me, it's mashed potatoes are my favorite. I save probably a couple of bites of turkey for the last, so I can kind of swab everything up, or a piece of bread, and
I say your rolls are for that.
Do that swabbing of the plate to get that good last bite of everything.
Yep, that piece of turkey that swipes up the little bit of mashed potato residue and gravy and anything else that's on that plate. Just like get it all at once.
Yep.
Yeah, I would probably say mashed potatoes are my favorite part, especially if they're homemade.
Absolutely.
If it's different if they were instant, but if they're like hand peeled, homemade mashed potatoes, then yep. And you can taste the difference. I don't care what
absolutely.
you say.
The texture is a whole lot different too. Yeah.
As far as I probably save a couple bites of those for last as well. But I mean, what part of Thanksgiving meal do you not enjoy? I mean, you're only putting what you like on the plate. So exactly. I mean, what isn't there to enjoy? It's not like I don't like cranberry sauce, so let me put some of that on my plate and then be like, well, I enjoyed 90% of it.
Yeah.
So our first question beyond our icebreaker is, do you talk politics or religion with family? If so, how does that go? If not, why not?
You need to ask that question.
That's a loaded question.
I guess I'll expand it beyond the Thanksgiving, because for Thanksgiving for us, it's just usually the five of us and a friend. And that's intentional. Maybe for this reason or not, I'm not sure, but mostly more so because my extended family, my sisters and my in-laws, they're all with their families as well. So it's just easy for us, the five of us, to hang out. But as we, get into the month of December, we'll have separate family gatherings for my side and for my wife's side. And we tend to have some of those conversations. It's usually respectful. It can get a little heated and passionate, but it's at the end of the day. I mean, like Matt, we just had conversation. There's going to be things that we agree upon and we don't agree upon, but at the end of the day, we can walk away and say that we're still family. We're still together.
Yeah.
So
I'm fortunate as far as my immediate family, we all tend to share a lot of the same views. It's the extended family where some of those ripples start to occur. And so, I mean, depends on which circle of the family we're with in terms of whether or not we discuss, politics, and it's just, to me, as far as why not, it just makes things a lot easier if we don't,
right.
Because you would think as family, just like in the United Methodist Church, we could agree to disagree on things without it causing a problem. But unfortunately, there are just those family members that can't do that. So,
yeah.
What about
Doesn't happen in our house. Nope. Nope. We don't talk. That's the rule. I can't remember what number we gave. I want to say like 76 or something. And rule number 76, don't talk about it, because it just causes friction. There's respect, but there's a lot of disrespect. And this is just with all over the board on, especially politics and, talking COVID, talking this and talking that. It's just, we can't even agree. We can't even start a conversation without somebody blowing up. So it's just safe to stay out of that conversation. Yeah. Religion we're good about, but no politics. That's the rule. No politics at the table.
It's just funny, like I said, you would think, as family members, you could agree to disagree if you don't see eye to eye on things. But like, I've seen things within, especially like my mother's side of the family, where it's like, you're related, and yet that's how you're going to talk to each other, or the crap you're going to post on Facebook. And it's like, wow. Okay. Yeah. It's like, when you see that post and you're about ready to comment, and you're just like, no, I think I'll just, it'll be better just to avoid it. No. Yes, I should say something, but no, I've got other things I need to do today than spend half my day on Facebook trying to argue with a family member.
Right. You got some family on my wife's side who are they live down in Ohio, and they're Ohio State fans, of course. And so that when we gather in December for her side of the family Christmas, it's the last 10 years for me, it's been very difficult in that area, because they've just been absolutely kicking our tails all over the place. It's always in good spirit and good jest, though. But maybe this year the tune will be different, but we'll see after Saturday. I'm hoping, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Well, what is the best strategy for communicating with people with whom you hold significant disagreement? I'll just start with that one, because there's multiple questions with this section here. But what is the best strategy for communicating with people with whom you hold significant disagreement?
Talk about common ground. Keep it within the boundaries, like kind of get the boundary set. And, even if it's within yourself, just set the boundaries, which is a safe topic, and stay to the safe topics, even if, I have a certain family member who likes to just, all of a sudden go into keep dropping hints on the conversation that they know is going to stir. And I try to, and I don't know if it's, with being a teacher or what, but it's like, let's turn back around. Let's keep turning it around. So yeah, just keep common ground, conversations, and that makes such a happy visit that way.
I usually try to approach those difficult conversations with not necessarily trying to convince them otherwise of what they believe or trying to change their mind, but at least being open to both sides of the conversation. Like, you're expecting me to hear it is that you have to say, then I think you have to be open to hearing what I have to say if it's different from what you feel or think on a particular matter. And sometimes I just find that there is that side that it's like the only thing that needs to be heard is what I have to say, and I don't care what you have to say. And it's like, well, that's not really a great way to handle conversation or for us to find any of that common ground that you talk about, Pastor Jackie. I mean, because essentially that's what we're trying to do. We may not agree when we're done talking about whatever it is, that we have a significant disagreement about, but if we can at least find some common ground, then we can, hopefully find a way to move forward with whatever it is we're dealing with.
Right.
Any suggestions, Pastor Curtis?
No, I would echo just what you guys have said of having that respectful place and safe space where, beliefs, opinions, facts. Let's not forget about facts. Truth can be shared and offered and laid out. And again, at the end of the day, I'm not trying to, if I'm having conversation, I'm not always trying to convince someone of my side. I'm just trying to express how I feel about something or why I believe what I believe. And that's, I think, at the end of the day too, what, I've always encouraged my parishioners is to be able to know why you believe what you believe. Is it based on emotion? Is it based on truth? Is it based on, experiences, all these things, but be able to explain in a proper way why you believe what you believe. Why do you believe this? What's driving it?
Well, that's a great segue, because the next couple of questions here is, what role does emotion play and what role does persuasion play?
I think it depends on what you're talking about.
I agree with that.
We can become emotional about so many things in our conversations. And we get emotional when we're preaching, we get emotional when we're teaching. And that's okay. But I don't want someone, if I'm preaching and I'm getting to an emotional story, emotional part, I don't want someone to believe what I'm telling you because they see me becoming emotional about it, whether it's because it's touching something deep, a memory or whatever. I want them to believe what I'm sharing because there's truth in it, and because they believe it, not because they feel compassionate or sorry because it's brought emotion, whether it's excitement or anger or sadness or whatever. Believe what I'm telling you because you've done taken the time to absorb it and trust it and do your own discernment on it.
Right. Well, I think, for myself, somebody who wears their heart on their sleeve or whatever, it's just an extension of my passion for whatever it may be. If I get emotional about it when I'm talking, certainly though, there are those that can make the argument that, you might use emotion to pull on people's heartstrings to try and get them, leading into that persuasion. I think emotion can persuade people where it's like, I guess a simple example being, like the woman crying when the police officer pulls her over, and then him being like, okay, well, just slow it down and I'll let you go without a ticket this time. Where if a guy tried it, it'd be like, here's your ticket, have a nice day. But I certainly, I mean, it certainly can be situational where I don't think emotion has to be a negative in a conversation, but as long as it's, I guess, used with the proper intention versus, using it for purposes of persuasion,
right?
Then it changes the story. I mean, because certainly, that I think there's laying out your facts, your argument or whatnot, but then there's, trying to persuade a person, as opposed to just being like, okay, here's what I have to offer on this discussion, do with it what you will, as opposed to being like, don't come to the dark side,
right? And I think we see that tactic in so many areas of our culture. We see it in our advertising, we see it in our politics, we see it in our churches as well.
Mhm.
We see it in so many areas. And again, if the first thing that came to mind when you were talking about that, Matt, is there's has been these series of commercials for like the SPCA or the ASPCA, the Animal Protection Society,
Yes.
where they're showing the dogs and the kittens and the kennels and the shelters and this and that, and it's very emotional. And I remember my kids would see that and they would just be weeping at the end. It's like, Dad, we need to get a puppy. It's like, no.
Well, it doesn't help that they play in the arms of an angel.
Exactly.
Right. Okay, yeah, the song's what does.
Exactly.
That's
I want
persuasion.
all of them.
Right. But we do those during our worship experiences. We
That's
tailor
true.
music and lighting and settings to create a scene, an experience, an emotional reaction. So, but we're doing it to try and draw people closer to God and to maybe,
Right.
Release something they're carrying or whatever, so that they can move forward. But again, if it's for nefarious reasons, that's not so good. But if it's for the greater good,
Right.
then okay.
Right.
Absolutely.
Hey, and I mean, you could just as easily walk in and give a message on a Sunday that would totally piss people off just because of the fact that if they don't agree with what you believe or feel or whatever, then, it's like, well, I'll show them, and come in. But, ultimately it's, again, I think goes back to trying to find that common ground, because the reality is we're not all vanilla. We're not all chocolate. It's like everybody likes a different flavor or whatnot. So it's like how, as opposed to trying to convince them, to think otherwise or what, it just kind of like that politics conversation, you either find a common place that you can discuss it, or you just maybe try to, not talk about it so that you can maintain the peace. I guess the one thing I would say, kind of going back to what Pastor Curtis mentioned, is like, if you're gonna disagree about something, then be able to at least explain why it is you feel that way or you believe what you believe. Stick to your guns, I guess, more or less. And for myself, I tend to have more respect for somebody that can do that, whether I agree with it or not. I'd rather somebody be like, this is why I believe this. Okay, I can respect that, versus if you just were like, well, because, or,
Right.
Right.
Well,
Right.
I don't know why. It's just what I believe. Well, you got to have some conviction about something if you're going to be that adamant, to disagree with somebody, then you better be able to, I guess, back it up.
And I think that's why is, good for us as pastors to expose ourselves a little bit, sharing those personal stories, sharing those times, especially when we mess up. This is what happened. I messed up and I lost this, or that happened. And there's where that emotional comes into it too. But it also can be a persuasion where you're trying to say, like, this is what happened to me, and this is why I'm feeling this way. This is why I believe this way. This is why I do what I do. And it's kind of like, oh, now I see why she does that, or he does that, or, and that. But I think, we have to kind of show our deck of cards as well as we're hearing the message.
So is it possible to be an open listener with someone who holds values completely different from yours?
I'd say definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be a good listener, even in this job period. I mean, it doesn't matter your thoughts, you can be, and there are those pastors who will, no, this isn't the way it's going to go, but you have to be a listener, because there's going to be something in there, especially if somebody has an issue. Maybe it's an issue with one of us, and they're like, and they're going on and on and on and on, and you're like, you're not agreeing with it. But then you find out there's something there that they're really hurting about that had nothing to do with why they came in and going about that. I mean, there's that scenario there, but definitely. You have to be a listener. You have to be a good listener.
Well, and I mean, for myself, I like to think, one of my gifts is being a listener. But I think, what people have to keep in mind is just because you don't get the answer you're looking for, or that you get somebody to agree with you, doesn't mean that they're not listening. Or if somebody comes to you seeking a change, and because you don't make that change, well, they're not hearing me. No, I hear you. It's just that, again, if we don't agree, it doesn't mean I'm just going to do something because you came to me to talk about it. I listen to you, and I think that's sometimes where there has to be some understanding is it's like, as a leader, especially, like it would behoove me, as you said, Jackie, to listen. And I want people to know that they're heard, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to either change my mind or do something that you came to me with. And so I think you have to understand, like, people can be listening even though they may still not agree with you or, do what you ask them to, when they come to you. So, I mean, I think people can be. I think it's beneficial. I almost think in terms of like forgiveness. I mean, we are told in scripture to forgive. Doesn't mean I have to trust you. So it's like, well, I can listen to you, but it doesn't mean I still, it doesn't mean I have to agree with you. And I think that's difficult sometimes for people, because then there's that misinterpretation. Well, you're not listening to me. No, I listen to you. Right. I still choose not to agree with you.
Right. But I would even add the word respect in there. Because I think if you truly sit and listen to that person and you don't agree with what they're saying, and you really, you're total opposite on that. But I think you gain respect in their eyes. Like, you're willing to listen. Yeah. And even if you just, hey, I hear what you're saying, and I get what you're saying. Even if you want to throw in, I don't agree with what you're saying, but you know what? I hear what you're saying.
Yep.
And
I think respect is in there. Sorry.
Yeah. And I think we've lost that part of our conversation in our society, where we don't make time to have. I want to say we had this topic a while back on here about having these high level education, not educational, but just thought provoking conversations of, let's talk about things that are difficult or are uncomfortable, that we don't agree on, for the better of each of us. Again, are you doing it to try and persuade me? Are you doing it to try and convince me? Or are we just doing it to have conversation, to become better informed? And I think that's what we're looking for, is to be better informed about situations, about people, about life, because I think hopefully too, and this, I think, is part of our pastoral walk, is that we want to have these conversations so that maybe through that we pick up why someone is, and this is going to sound bad, why someone is the way they are. Why, I think for me, I'm always wanting to know, well, what has formed your opinions to this place? What has formed your faith to this part in your life? And when people share their experiences and their values, you begin to see why. Now, if I have conversation with someone whose values are diametrically different than mine, I'm probably not going to convince them, and they're not going to convince me to have a shared values. But like we've talked about already, maybe there is a little sliver of that common ground that we can stand on together and say, well, we're very opposed here, and here. Wow, we had some commonality on this issue, and can we build something off of that?
I think as somebody who identifies as a centrist or a moderate, whatever term you want to use, there becomes part of the frustration where it's like, you have to pick a side. No, I don't, because I feel like there's room for everybody, or we can work on both sides. I don't have to be this or that.
Right.
And that certainly plays in sometimes to some conversations where it's like, well, where do you stand? Well, I stand right here in the fact that there are some things I agree with you, and there are some things that I agree with you, but don't tell me I have to be either on this side or that side.
Right.
You know. All right. Well, it is the 400th anniversary of the first Thanksgiving with the I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, but one indigenous group of people. How might we create a deeper narrative around the Thanksgiving holiday than simply a remembrance of peace between the early pilgrims and this indigenous tribe that celebrated a 3-day feast together following a successful harvest by the pilgrims, which was guided by this indigenous group's methods? Thanksgiving is a difficult conversation, more and more as time goes on. It certainly was just kind of like that. Oh yes, this is the day the pilgrims and the back then the phrasing being, this is when the pilgrims and the Indians got together, and what a happy day. And there are certainly those of the view that think this is a highly inappropriate holiday because of the fact that of the danger that was brought upon the indigenous people. So yeah, trying to find a way of celebrating Thanksgiving as a remembrance of peace. That's tricky, considering there are some people that feel differently about this holiday.
I saw a meme this week that said, Thanksgiving, the day when Americans provided a free meal to European immigrants. It's kind of like, oh, that's a different way to look at it.
Yeah.
And so maybe I think for one, we've been talking about finding truth, and I think as people of this country, understanding the truth of the Native American, of the indigenous American, the people who were here before the Europeans came, and maybe looking at what was the true spirit of this coming together. It was a celebration of a harvest. It was having these two groups of people having time together to honor their each traditions and their shared experience, and finding ways to collaborate for the better of each community. So maybe somewhere within all of that, there's hope as we go forward. Because when you talk about people with two different sets of values, these were it, but they had a common table. And so maybe that's it too, of having a common table.
I like that.
So
I think sometimes, the conversation kind of once again depends on who you're talking with, and the struggle becoming, I guess in some ways, people identifying from a white privilege standpoint of like, oh, look at this wonderful thing we did with the, again, prior term Indians, but then certainly, being considerate of what occurs in the years to come after this Thanksgiving that occurred 400 years ago,
and what occurred before as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yes. And so, I mean, for myself, because of the fact that I don't know enough about the history of this event, I tend to try and lean on the side of caution and not wanting to upset anybody or offend anybody, kind of like the political conversation, because of the fact that I know that there are people that feel differently about this holiday on both sides of the conversation. So, I mean, I certainly would like to look at it as maybe an opportunity of peace, but I don't know if that was necessarily what became of it, when it occurred. So, another tricky conversation. I know, like, it makes me think, on TikTok, there's a creator that goes by the name Modern Warrior, who is an indigenous person that uses the phrase "Hey colonizer" when he's refuting, white people who, want to discredit the indigenous community, or certainly, have comments about the indigenous communities amongst us in our country or what. And there are certainly those that struggle with him using the term colonizer, but sure. There's some truth behind that, and I think it just it's an extension of white privilege, where it's like, it's easy for us to sit and say, well, this or that. But, when you're not taking in the perspective of others that you're speaking about, it can certainly, cause for a difficult conversation and certainly upset some people. Pastor Jackie, any thoughts about how, you might handle this conversation?
Well, unless I agree with you guys immensely, but I also see it as an opportunity for hospitality. And, well, Curtis, like you mentioned, you've got family, you got friends coming over that, and I just remember back to my days living in Florida, single, and it was like I lived in an apartment building and there was 8 of us, and we all would get together for Thanksgiving dinner. We'd all pitch in, buy the turkey together and the dressing, but then we had to bring a dish that was like a favorite memory of ours. And it was just coming together and just, talking about what we're thankful for, and just the different things. And it was like a community. And it was like, we came from different backgrounds. We were, we weren't all white. We weren't all, we just came from different backgrounds. And it was just it was the best time living in this little apartment complex on the, little inland, whatever the waters were of Indian Shores. But I learned so much about being grateful and thankful, and it pays that, that listening to each other. You hear, we all had different careers. We all were, there were some executives that lived in this building, and there were some of us that just, waited on tables. And it was just sort of that whole, I felt like we were almost like a melting pot coming together. And that was, again, that respect and just hearing each other out and that. But I think that's what Thanksgiving to me is about. And it's just, just bringing those to your table that, maybe don't have a place to go for Thanksgiving, or even just bring those to the table that you're thankful for, just, going back to being that simple.
Yeah. Well, I think, for myself, some of the difficulty is that, I think about the fact that, in the United Methodist Church, we had a hand in certainly harming the indigenous communities of our country, or at one point in time, in which, we spent an annual conference basically trying to rectify and apologize for our hand in those things. And, it's another difficult conversation for us as pastors and as Christians, when we have done harm, and then some not, choosing to acknowledge, their role in that. And so it goes beyond Thanksgiving. I mean, there are other areas in which, this same kind of situation arises. But I mean, again, as we've talked about numerous times during the course of this conversation, integrating, respect and finding the common ground in which hopefully we can move forward. Yes, it wasn't my fault, maybe what happened, because I wasn't even alive, but I certainly feel like it's my role to apologize and find a way in which we can hopefully make the world better, so that maybe those kind of situations don't arise again or continue in some circumstances, because that's not living out the gospel if we continue to I guess allow those things to continue, or to allow people to believe that those types of things are okay, or what, I guess. I do want to share, there was a point here, and I apologize, I wish I could pronounce this tribe's name, but out of respect. I don't want to butcher it. And so
Absolutely.
this particular indigenous group of leaders note that the real story of Thanksgiving for this people has little to do with the harvest festival of 1621. These are typical festivals for them. And in fact, they celebrate 4 harvest festivals a year. The real story is one of a great dying, where sickness from European settlers took 80 to 90% of the community in the years leading up to the festival. In addition, the story about language, community, and culture ripped away in cultural genocide and forced assimilation. Ooh, some of those things going on in the world today still too.
Yep.
That's cultural genocide and forced assimilation certainly brings up some other things, but I think that is a helpful piece of information on the history of Thanksgiving, and another thing to certainly have a conversation over when you're talking about it. So, all right. Well, our next question, as we're drawing towards the end of our conversation, says, is gratitude a spiritual discipline? How do you practice gratitude, and what role does it play in your spiritual or daily life? Gratitude, a spiritual discipline. Thoughts?
I think it is, because if we talk about spiritual disciplines, those are things that we choose to integrate into our faith. Prayer, worship, repentance, things like this. And I think we have a choice daily to be grateful, to show gratitude, or we have a choice not to. And I think it's kind of like one of these things like joy, where, happiness and joy are very different. I think gratitude is a lifestyle that we can kind of embrace, even in the midst of going through difficult times or being in grief or sadness or anger. We can still show gratitude. And I think it's important that we model that as Christians, as followers of Jesus, because the gratitude first and foremost should be to God, for all that we've got, all that we've received, and for God's provision for us. And so for me, it's acknowledging that without God's help, without God, I've got nothing. And so my ultimate gratitude goes to God. But then, it's just, I think it's a little gratitude can go such a long way with people. I was having coffee this morning with a couple of guys from church at Tim Hortons here in town. And it's the little things. It's making sure that, the person serving you coffee or who's taking your order, just show them respect, show them appreciation. They're not below me in any way.
Absolutely.
Just because they're serving me coffee doesn't mean that in the order of life, in the order of humanity, that they are somehow beneath me. And just letting, the last things I always say to people, hey, I appreciate you. I appreciate you. And just those kind of things from someone who worked, and Jackie, you did too. We spent careers in service, in the service industry. Those words are gold, because sometimes, people in those industries are looked down upon. And we've over the last almost 2 years now, we've seen the immense value of these, the term frontline workers.
Right.
And so I think, but there's so many other areas of our life where gratitude can be expressed and shown and lived out.
Well, I certainly, would concur with that. And I just finished a series last Sunday called Thank You Notes. And I kind of concluded with, the fact that 2 little words can mean so much and be so powerful. So in terms of gratitude, you say, I appreciate you. Just simply saying thank you. Excuse me. I think is a tremendous way of showing gratitude, because so often we take people and things for granted, that we forget to say those two words. And often on when I was younger, I certainly got a lot of gratitude from people when I would say those simple things like please and thank you. When so many don't, like, oh my gosh, thank you. It's like, it's so kind of you to say that or what. And it's like, I would always go, well, thank my mother. She taught me well. But I mean, in showing your gratitude to somebody, I think something even as simple as just saying thank you can make a world of difference.
Right.
How do you practice gratitude, Pastor Jackie?
Well, just like, what both of you were saying, and it's always remember to say please and thank you. And just even calling someone, you call them with respect. And, for instance, living in Florida for so long and our son was born there. And, we always taught him not to call someone by their first name, but either put Miss or Mr. So, Miss Joan or whatever. And it was just so many people, the elderly, would stop him and just thank him and just like, that is so nice to call me that, and it was just, and that, but I mean, it meant the world to them that he just showed this, but just to say thank you. And, and even if we, and I'm terrible at it, and I beat myself up on it because I'm terrible with thank you notes. I mean, I am so grateful for a gift in that, but I like telling the person that face to face, thank you so much for thinking of me. I think that this gift means the world to me. But yeah, I'd like to follow it up with a thank you note. And it's like, but I don't always do it timely. And I'm terrible with it. And I apologize for that, for those of you who have waited long and still are waiting for me to thank you. But it is, it's just, it means the world. It just, and I think respect, like you said, Curtis, that goes a long way. And I know like here in Claire, going into restaurants and it's like, I'm back kind of thing. And it's just like you're building those relationships with them and you show that respect and the love and excitement that, hey, I'm back here. I can't wait to work with you, work with you, talk to you, whatever it is. And it's just, but yes, it's that whole, just showing gratitude. And it is never feel that you're above anyone else. And that means a lot because there's too many people that have that arrogance about them, they just have that expectation that you're going to be bowing down to them. And it's just even peers, working with them, I kind of get that feeling to some peers. And it's just not you guys, but just that, and that just kind of like, okay, back off. But,
right.
It's respect.
Well, right. And I mean, as far as the part of the question, does it play a role in your spiritual or daily life? I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
I think most definitely. I mean, every time I pray, I thank God, and it's because, a lot of what I have and who I am is because of having God in my life. And I mean, obviously, thank you will never be enough for the blessings in my life, but I certainly think it should be a part of it can be a spiritual discipline and it can be a part of your daily life or spiritual life, in the fact that how often do people not acknowledge God in the good things that happen, but certainly turn to God when the bad things start to happen. And it's like, it's not to say that God isn't listening or that God isn't, going to maybe provide an answer for whatever it is you come to God with. But at the same time, like, you have to understand, like any relationship, it's a little hard to, when you're not, when gratitude isn't shown, to return that gratitude, or to help somebody out. So, I mean, right. I certainly think that, it does factor into your spiritual life as well as your daily life. And, it's a matter of being thankful for each and every day that we're able to open our eyes, showing gratitude to those people who certainly even take the moment to say hi to you in a day,
right.
Or, whether they, bring over, a plate of cookies or whatever it may be, or, somebody who's trying to help you on your spiritual journey, just by simply being there to support you. I mean, gratitude is huge. I can't think of a reason why you wouldn't consider it a spiritual discipline or why you wouldn't apply it to your life of faith. But another one of those conversations that we can wrestle with, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my friends, we are drawing towards the end of our time, but before we sign off, certainly want to give you an opportunity for any final thoughts on today's discussion, or just maybe a tidbit of wisdom to share with people before we say goodbye.
I would say that in these really delicate times right now, that as someone whose holiday table has grown smaller, some because of our choice, but in the respect to not having parents around, soak up every bit you can with your family and lay aside those differences for the day and just embrace the time that you have with them, because I would give everything I own to have a Thanksgiving with mom and dad and with Frenchie and Rose. So,
yeah, I hear you. A few less seats at our table as well, and it's just it is a hard time in that, but just to be thankful for who we do have with us, and grateful for that time that we can spend together. But you're right, anything just to go back. I'd love to spend another Thanksgiving with my grandparents and hearing my grandfather's wisdom, as he would always say, and that. But just grateful for those times that we did have with them, and thankfulness and that. But just that, even to make room at your table for others. Make room at your table for those who maybe don't have a family at all right now and are just going to be sitting home alone. Just make room at your table for those people and enjoy that time. Just enjoy that time you have together and be grateful for that.
Yeah. Well, certainly appreciate those thoughts. And I would just add, as part of that series I finished up, came across the term, thanks living. The idea of just maybe showing our thankfulness in a way that we typically wouldn't during this season. And, certainly trying to go beyond ourselves or beyond our own households. And the phrase I've been using a lot lately is just trying to live like Christ in plain sight. And so maybe thanks living might be the attitude we take towards this particular season as we give thanks. And I certainly hope that you've enjoyed this episode. I hope you find a way to express your thankfulness to others and to those you love, and even your neighbors, so that you may be at peace with yourself and with your relationship with God. And we thank you once again for joining us for another episode of Wrestling Beyond the Pulpit. But until next time, peace be with you.
Peace.
Peace.